Wander Wealthy Podcast, episode 152, with Lindsay Bryan-Podvin. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Wander Wealthy Podcast. Today on the show, I am joined by a guest. Her name is Lindsay Bryan-Podvin, and she has actually been on this show before, back on episode 86. When we first talked, we talked about Lindsay and her job, which is actually that she is a financial therapist, which I find so crazy that we haven't had financial therapists before. She's the first financial therapist in Michigan, I believe, and probably the first maybe you've ever even heard of and find out about. But the truth is, finances cause a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of emotions that we could use an outlet and we could use professionals to help us go through. I help my clients with their money mindset, and it's definitely not therapy, but it's coaching and more so goal setting and being able to visualize where they want to be. And Lindsay really works on those deeper emotions. And specifically, she works with women and couples, those higher achieving women and couples who are making great money, but are still stressed and having negative feelings around their finances. And so in this episode, we actually dive in to the new, I would call it newer term, although again, I'm surprised that this hasn't been out in the world as frequently and as popular, but I mean, it's money stuff, so it never really is. But the newer term of financial anxiety and how finances create this level of anxiety in a really unique way outside of kind of all of the other forms of anxiety that pop up throughout our lives. So we have a really, really great conversation around this. Lindsay has some great tips, and she's even written a book about it, you guys. So you got to check it out. Let's just dive straight into this week's episode. Here is episode 152 with Lindsay Bryan-Podvin. Lindsay, welcome back to the Wander Wealthy Podcast. It has been, once this goes live, over a year since you were last on the show. So I'd just love it if you could update us and tell us what's new for you since we last spoke.
Yes. Well, first and foremost, I am so happy to be back. We met via the magic of the internet and Instagram, and you actually, Tess, were the first person to invite me onto their podcast. So I owe you just a huge thank you for reaching out to me and taking a risk on this internet person and saying, hey, I don't know what financial therapy is. It sounds interesting. I think my audience would be interested in it. And now this last year has just been such a wild ride, but really thank you, because you helped to kick it off. And yeah, so thankful for that.
Oh, happy to be a part of your journey.
Yeah. So I'm a financial therapist, for those of you who don't know who I am and didn't listen to the episode from over a year ago.
Yes, episode 86.
There we go, episode 86. Wow, that's crazy. I'm the first financial therapist in Michigan, and what I do is work primarily with women and couples around the emotional and psychological side of money. I'm trained as a mental health therapist. I have my degree in social work, and then I was cross-trained in financial literacy and financial psychology to be able to provide a more holistic approach to money management. And in this past year, as I kind of hinted at, a lot of stuff has happened. I wrote a book that's coming out in winter of 2020. I have been on a bunch of podcasts. I have grown, I know vanity metrics don't matter, but I've grown my Instagram following organically, and I've just connected with some amazing entrepreneurs and people in the money space. And it has been so fun and rewarding to connect with other people, collaborate with them, and get our message out, our different but similar messages out about the importance of talking about money and talking about it in a bunch of different ways.
Yes, absolutely. What would you say? Because I know when we had first started, therapy obviously wasn't new for you, but this idea of being a financial therapist, you had really just started your brand and more so pivoting specifically into this space, at least from your internet brand perspective. What have you learned over the last year in working with and bringing on clients who are working with you specifically around financial therapy and knowing, they're hiring you for that thing? What has kind of been surprising for you or has popped up as kind of a leading I guess, a leading indicator of what's going on in our world.
Yeah, I mentioned kind of earlier that I'm working with couples, which actually surprised me. I'd originally gone into this work just saying like, oh, anyone who needs financial therapy, come my way. I identify as a woman. My guess is probably more women will come to me, but it didn't turn out that way at all. In fact, I had a lot of men coming to me and a lot of women coming to me. But the bulk of them, even though they were coming into my office as individuals, were married or in serious relationships. And really, really quickly, I learned we are not going to get anywhere if the other person in your relationship is not sitting here in this room with you. So the shift to couples happened completely organically, and it wasn't something that I had planned on, but it has been so fun and so rewarding. And I've learned so much just about marriage and partnerships and the importance of money in a relationship and making sure that you're talking about it and planning for it and on the same page with it. And it's been really fun to watch how money can act as just this additional way to deepen intimacy in a relationship that I kind of knew, but really once I got into this work, I was like, oh my gosh, it's such a powerful pillar in our relationships that we aren't really talking about. I mean, we talk a lot about open communication and your sex life and making sure that you share the same values, and all of that is important and valuable and should be nourished. And money's behind, around, and in between all of that stuff. So it's been really, really fun. And I've also learned just that money is can be such a divisive topic in couples. It's the number 2 cause of divorce in the United States. So it's also a really preventable cause of divorce, in my opinion, but we're just not taught how to talk about it in any way, shape, or form, particularly in a partnership.
There's so much I want to dig into. This is juicy.
Oh,
juicy
good.
I mean, thinking about talking about money, I love that you said that having, conversations between couples about money can be a form of intimacy. And people are probably like, what? But I literally, for lack of a better term, I'm turned on to talk about money with my partner. I love to sit down with him and plan and think about negotiating different things and what we would do if we made more money in a place and me, we get deeper into a lot of probably what you do with the therapy, but into the money mindset stuff and going, it's okay to want more money. We just talk about all of it. And it's so much fun for me. I crave that, but I know that most people don't start there because either they're bringing forward bad money stories or money dynamics from previous relationships or maybe childhood, or they just have habits that maybe they're ashamed of. Have you found, well, I guess this is a 2-part question. 1, is it hard to get the other couple in the room with you? And 2, what do you do? Do you have a boundary or a rule, or do you have some couples who just won't come in and work with you together and you just have to work with one?
Yeah, great question. So first, I just want to say you are not alone. I love my money dates. They're the best. And I love also planning and dreaming and imagining what if and how retirement will look and what working 2 days a week will feel like. So I feel you.
Yes.
So going back to your questions about what do I do if one person comes into the room and I need to get the other person on board. So first it usually again starts out with one person coming in, and I'll kind of follow up on what I do now. But how I learned this and how I did this was I would have one person and I'd meet with them 2 or 3 times, and then I would essentially just address the elephant in the room. And I might say something like, it sounds like you're working really hard to get your money stuff in order. I'm curious about what your spouse's take is on this, or how your spouse contributes to the household finances, and try and kind of wiggle in that way, and also invite them in to support the person who is on the couch, right? So I'd say you're doing a lot of hard work. It'd be really helpful if you guys could both be here so we can make sure you guys are on the same team and on the same page towards achieving your goals as a couple. So that's kind of the way I would work to try and get the other person in the room. And in terms of boundaries, rules moving forward, now I will not take on new clients who are married or in serious partnerships as individuals. So if like a couple, a husband and wife, let's say, is married and the wife calls me and says, I would love to do financial therapy, but my husband's not interested. I essentially say like, thank you, but no thank you. Talk to them. And if and when they're ready, then I'm happy to see you both, but I can't do good work with one half of a couple. So that's my new rule moving forward.
Yeah. And I'm sure even at the get-go of deciding to put this rule in place, that's a hard rule to have because I mean, you're saying no to money.
Yeah.
From the business perspective, and because, you know, I've made a pivot in my life too, and most of the people listening are working with clients, they're coaches, they're service providers, and we all need to have these boundaries in place and these rules in place. And from a working with someone perspective, putting those boundaries in place can feel scary because you're saying no to money. So walk us through even how you got over that mental hurdle.
Yeah, I talk about it like saying I was getting my financial therapy sea legs, right? So at first I was like, oh, I don't know if I could do this in terms of saying no. And like anything, as you know, practicing in the work that you do, when you say no to a client who's a good fit, you open up the door for clients who are really good fits. And it's not to say that that client couldn't be an amazing client, but they're not a good client for me right now. They may need to do their own individual work before they come to me, or their partner may need to do some individual work before me. And then maybe in 6 months, they find me again and they're both ready to go. But it's not a good use of anybody's time if we're spending the bulk of the therapy session talking about why one person doesn't want to be in the room. My work is really best for clients who can identify that there's some stress with their money. They can identify that something's going on. They share, here are the handful of things we've tried, and they're ready for a fix. These are the clients who have done some work already. It's not for the clients who are like, what's therapy? Why do I need that? It's for the clients who are like, look, we've tried reading these personal finance books, or we've tried couples counseling, and we still feel like we're going in circles. Those are my people because they're ready to go and they've got a good baseline knowledge. So that's just kind of what I think is when you say no to people who aren't a good fit for you, it gives you the opportunity to say yes and to be fully present with the clients who really you can do your best work with.
Yeah. And I can completely attest to this as well. About half of my clients right now are still, you know, personal finance focused. The other half are business. When it comes to business, we can do all day. If you're married, I can still just work with you. But when it comes to the personal side, so many of my married clients who don't show up together, that's the biggest issue that we have is we don't get the full picture. And even if we have the full picture, you can do so much work. And I feel for a lot of the clients who show up independently because they are doing so much work, even from like the tangible moving money, budgeting the money, saying no to things that they feel like, you know, maybe they're overspending on, but their partner either has no idea about it or has an inkling of it, but is not interested in. And it breaks my heart to have that be the case. And obviously I haven't put that hard and fast boundary in place. And it might be something that I have to do in the future because it is so hard to move this huge ship forward when you don't have both of the captains turning the wheel.
Totally. You and I are on the analogy train today because as you were talking, I'm just like, yeah, it's like pushing a boulder uphill, but if you had 2 people, it'd be so much easier. So I love that you just said that.
Oh, okay. Well, we got on our soapbox about that, but obviously, like, you know, when you need to work and you're in a marriage, when it comes to money, especially, like, there's only so much one individual person can do, especially when it comes to if you're fighting or having issues emotionally and from a mindset perspective around the finances. But I want to get into a more specific topic, which I'm sure trickles up to people needing to seek financial therapy for in couples, but it's the topic that you wrote your book around, which is financial anxiety. I feel like this is a new term in a way. Like people are starting, first of all, I think people are becoming more and more willing to admit that they have anxiety, just like baseline. But now we're becoming more and more open to, having social anxiety, having, I don't know, the other types of anxiety. But financial anxiety is probably like one of the newest pieces of like, this exists. This is something that we're all dealing with and in some way, shape, or form. How do you help, your clients or help the public through by means of the book that you have coming out, identify what financial anxiety is and if maybe they might be struggling with it?
Yeah, great question. So financial anxiety is really any sort of negative or avoidant thoughts, feelings about money, and it can manifest in a ton of different ways. It can look like avoiding paying your bills, procrastinating on signing up for something like a 401k or 403b. It can be maybe anxiously planning for the future. So kind of going above and beyond your financial planning to the point where it becomes almost obsessive. So any type of negative and really uncomfortable thoughts and feelings that feels like anxiety, right? So it feels like your heart is racing, your stomach's in knots, you're a little sweaty, you might be dizzy. That's financial anxiety. And those uncomfortable thoughts and feelings are what get in the way of taking steps towards managing your money. And I firmly believe that money is really not that hard. It's very, very basic math, but it's all the emotional and psychological stuff that gets in the way of taking those actionable steps that gets people into trouble. And then it creates a spiral, right? So they get anxious about signing up for their 401k plan because they don't understand it. So they put it off for a year, and then the next year comes around and then they feel behind. And so they avoid it again. And it becomes this really vicious cycle. The tricky thing about financial anxiety that's different from, you mentioned social anxiety, something like social anxiety, is that when you are avoidant, in your finance life, it can have some really dire consequences. Where it was with social anxiety, the stakes can be high, but they're not always as high. So let me give an example. Let's say you have social anxiety and you walk into a party and you greet the host and they say, "Oh, hey, how are you?" And you say, "The weather's great," right? Like you just answer something totally wrong. You were anticipating they were asking you about your commute or something else, and you just answered inappropriately or incorrectly. So the social anxiety is there is, oh my gosh, the host probably thinks I'm so stupid. They probably think I don't pay attention. They think I'm such an idiot. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Now they're going to tell everyone that I don't know how to answer a basic hi, how are you question. You spend the night kind of spiraling and you think you have no friends, right? The reality is the host probably forgets 2 seconds later that you even answered that question, quote unquote, wrong. And they're going on with their day, hosting the party. Lo and behold, nobody else knows how you answered that question. Everything is perfectly fine. But with financial anxiety, going back to that example I gave, if you are so anxious that you can't sign up for an employer's retirement plan, the consequences are much higher. The stakes are much higher because for every year, as we know, every month, as we know, putting off investing in your retirement is taking away from your future. So with financial anxiety, it can lead to some pretty serious financial consequences, whereas other types of anxiety might not have those same types of consequences.
That's a really good point. And I think what's interesting is, and maybe this is just my personal observation, is financial anxiety almost seems like we've created it for ourselves, whereas other types of anxiety, maybe they've been created. And when I say we, I'm really meaning like society and the way that the world is working today compared to years ago when we would just like trade our cows for, I don't know, like some cheese or something. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense. Your cow can make cheese. But you know what I mean? Before money was a thing. And even earlier on, before, I guess, like big advertising and making people wish they had more than what they do. It seems like something that's been developed as we've found more and more ways to pump money into advertising and marketing to get other people to feel like they need more, but also creating more complex financial instruments. It seems like a very created, these causes are very created by like human intervention that then lead to, the us poor millennials who just grew up and emerged through the Great Recession and were like, oh my gosh, my great uncle Gary lost all of his money. I can never invest ever because that's going to happen to me, or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, to your point, it's all socially created, but then there's this layer of shame on top of it. So we're comparing ourselves to our friends and our neighbors based on nothing, right? Like most of us don't know our neighbors' personal finance situation. We don't know how much money they're making at work. We don't know how much debt they have. We don't know what they have or have not inherited. And yet we're basing our assumptions on how they're living their life, or we're assuming that they have a certain amount of money based upon the way they're living their life. And then we compare ourselves to, well, they're driving a new car. How come I'm not driving a new car? I have a quote unquote better job than them. Right. So we also don't know what the heck is going on. And we're comparing ourselves to everybody else, but based off of nothing. So it's so confusing.
So this is probably like the natural lead-in question of how can we use logic to undo financial anxiety?
Yeah.
Knowing that we're basing all these comparisons off of nothing.
Right. So that is one of my favorite things is, okay, all of this stuff is all in our head. So what we can do is just literally pause, say out loud, stop, say out loud, take a break, something. When you find yourself having these anxious thoughts and those thoughts are turning into feelings, when you feel yourself spiraling, and just stop and write down that anxious thought literally, and then just take a step back and look at it really logically and ask yourself, how true is this? What proof do I have that this is a really true thought, that this is a fact and not a thought? This comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, right? So it's the idea that your thoughts create your feelings create your actions, and then your actions contribute to the way that you think. And you can start at any point on the thought, feeling, action triangle. But this really is this idea of going, okay, what proof do I have? So let me give you an example. So if you have a thought, an anxious thought of, I don't understand credit scores, so I must be stupid. Right? That's a thought. It's not a fact. So you jot it down. I don't understand credit scores. I'm stupid. What proof do I have? Okay, the proof that I have that I'm stupid because I don't understand credit scores is I try to figure it out, but I get anxious, or I try to figure it out, but then I get overwhelmed. So it's kind of proof, but not really. But we're trying to really examine this thought with logic. Okay, what proof do I have that thought is not true? Okay, well, actually, I finished college. That means I must be somewhat smart to be able to finish that thing. I have tried looking up credit score factors several times on my own, and I feel like I understand it about 60 or 70%. I still have a ways to go, but I actually understand more than I'm giving myself credit for. Okay, so now we've got the proof or the evidence for that negative thought, and we have the proof or evidence against that negative thought. So what do? We kind of look at it, sort it out with logic and go, okay, what is an actual realistic fact instead of the thought? So the thought was, I don't understand credit scores, I must be stupid. After we go through this exercise, we go, actually, even though I get a little bit overwhelmed when I'm trying to learn my credit score and trying to figure out how I can improve it, I know that with patience and by asking for help, I will be able to understand it and learn the steps that I need to take in order to raise my credit score.
Mm-hmm. And I like that it's not, going from, I don't understand credit scores, I must be stupid, to like, I can totally get it, and I'm the smartest person ever, because, from my personal understanding of the way the brain works, it's going to go, no, you just said the opposite, and you believed the opposite just 2 minutes ago, so that's not true. So this method is really easing you into eventually knowing that someday you could say, I'm really smart, and I totally understand it 100%.
Right, exactly. And that, I mean, what you're hinting at is your training, right? In neurolinguistic programming. You can't go
Mm-hmm.
from, I'm the wealthiest, or you can't go from like, I'm the poorest person on earth to I manifest all money and I'm the wealthiest person on earth, right? That is too big a jump. So you have to kind of take stepping stones there and get your brain and body on board to move towards that next belief.
Mm-hmm. And I think financial anxiety as a whole is something that, and I had mentioned this, all of us kind of struggle with it in various shapes and forms. And you've shared many different examples of how it could pop up in your life and what it might look like. If we got our hands on your book, tell us a little bit about the book, when we can expect to see it, and what we can really expect from it, from getting our hands on it.
Yeah, so the book is called The Financial Anxiety Solution, and it is an interactive workbook, meaning that, yes, I'm going to talk to you about things, but the whole goal is that you have to do the work. I can give you examples like I just gave you, but that particular example might not resonate with you. So having a workbook means you get to use things from your own life and use the skills and tools that I'm teaching you to have the tools apply to you. So the book is full of various therapeutic techniques and journaling prompts. So you're going to get different worksheets on exercises just like that, right? From cognitive behavioral therapy. You'll get some interactive quizzes that will help you identify some pain points of your financial stress. We know that another cause of financial anxiety is feeling like you don't understand money. So there's a chapter in there dedicated just to the basics of personal finances, and then some quizzes there to help you go, oh, I actually do understand this and I can learn these different techniques. There are journal prompts to help you work through some of those money-related stories, some mindfulness exercises to help you calm down. And the bulk of it is really the thoughts and feelings side of things. Of the 10 chapters, 9 of them are thoughts, feelings, and like therapeutic techniques. And only one of them is really about the definitions of personal finance and how to budget, because that is reflective of my philosophy, that it's really very, very little of it is actually about the money, and the bulk of it is about all the other stuff that we associate with money.
No, and I completely agree with you. I mean, as a money coach, like who likes to get their hands dirty with the spreadsheets and doing the budgets and figuring out investing, so much of the issues that we work on when I'm working with my clients is simplifying their financial picture, or getting them to see the simplified version of it, and taking away the complexities of what they may have gotten wrapped into. If you're struggling with debt, a lot of times it's just the fact that credit cards are freaking confusing the way that they work. And we just need to back out of it and go back to basics of a very simple mathematical equation, like you said. And then in a lot of ways, if you could break that down and get back to basics and you're still spiraling in some way, it's most likely what has to do with, how you think about it, how you feel about it, rather than these things don't work for me and I'm not good at this.
Right.
So
right.
I love that you mentioned that. And I know that you have a special offer for the listeners. We will get to that when we wrap up the episode, but I have some questions for you now on your personal side of life. With the money round, I know we've talked about this before, probably the last time we recorded, but I just like to ask some questions about your money situation, and maybe it's changed. It's probably changed in the last year. So why don't you tell us how you're making money now? Maybe that hasn't changed. But other than that, what you are enjoying spending your money on.
So how I'm earning money hasn't really changed from last year. The bulk of my income comes from work one-on-one and two-on-one with clients. I would say the percentage of clients that are more financial therapy clients now is obviously much higher than it had been previously. I would say it was like maybe 50-50 of anxiety and depression clients versus financial therapy clients. And now I'm moving mostly towards all financial therapy clients, which is really exciting. So that's how I'm earning my money. I spend my money on all sorts of things. I think when we last spoke, I was bulking up my emergency fund, which sounds so not exciting, but that's done. It's in a nice high yield savings account, and having that topped off because my husband and I had bought a house and moved 2 years ago. So we were working on replenishing that account. Now that that's back to what a number that feels good for me, I feel really good about that. And now kind of shifting into other things. So kind of not going back to, but increasing retirement contributions and spending money. I always love to spend money on self-care. I know it sounds so boring, but it is what it is. I'm all about getting some good sleep, going and taking care of myself at the spa, spending money on my dog, all that good stuff.
Love it. And now that you've been working more and more with couples, how has that impacted your relationship with your husband and, what you guys have been doing or the way that you've been approaching your personal financial situation?
Oh, such a good question. So my husband's super private, and I obviously I wouldn't say I'm not private. I am private, but given the work that I do and how niche it is, I have to talk about it a lot, and I have to talk about it all the time in many different avenues to kind of get the word out about my business. So what's been really interesting for me is how to navigate working with couples and keeping my personal relationship more on the private side. So I wouldn't say that it's impacted the way in which we interact with our personal finances, but there certainly has been more discussion about what is on and off limits in terms of what I can share. I think if people follow along with me, I try to use the neutral partner instead of husband, just to protect his anonymity a little bit. I almost never use his name. I don't think there are any pictures of him on the interweb with me in any of my stuff. And it's not to say that he isn't supportive. He's 1,000% supportive. And he says, that is your world and your work, and the work that I do, I don't need to be in that limelight. And so I also respect him and our relationship by keeping that piece private.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, let's go into the quick and dirty Q&A, just some fast-paced questions to wrap up the show. And one thing I would love to know about you is how you differentiate yourself and your own free time from your work. What is it that you do that that you spend time on to get away from work?
Oh my God. I am such a Bravo junkie. And that is the best foremost self-care. Thursday nights, if you follow me on Instagram, you will almost always see me watching whatever housewife show is currently on with a giant bowl of popcorn. And that is my jam. And I also have taken to listening to I'm laughing because this is so silly, but also as women, we just need to embrace that sometimes we do weird stuff to take care of ourselves, and there's no shame. So I've taken to listening to this podcast called Everything Iconic by Danny Pellegrino, and he's a comedian that recaps all of the Bravo TV's shows. And
amazing.
It's so amazing, Tess. And walking to work, I have my earbuds in, and I look like I don't even know what I look like because I'm literally laughing out loud and rolling my eyes as I walk down the street. So that's my jam. That's how I spend my free time, is totally doing nothing related to money or therapy.
I feel for you because I listen to Bachelor recap podcasts, and a lot of people are a lot of our fellow entrepreneurs are posting their personal development podcast shows that they listen to, or, maybe it's this podcast. And I'm here I am listening to podcast or Bachelor gossip on a podcast.
Yeah, and Tess, there's so a time and place. Obviously I listen to your podcast all the time, and I have my other business podcasts that I have on loop, but I also have to inject some fun because it's so easy to just get stuck in the self-development wormhole that you forget that part of self-development and growth is relaxation and having fun. You can't be constantly grinding and trying to stuff your brain with new information.
Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree. All right. Who is your favorite person or account to follow on social media?
Well, staying with the money plus humor. I love following Amanda Holden. Her handle is Dumpster Doggy. And she is a personal finance person who brings humor to it. And she is just a feminist treat to follow on Instagram. So highly recommend following along with her.
Yes. What is the most impactful book that you've read maybe lately or I guess in your life?
Oh, in my life is a harder question, so I'll just answer lately.
Right.
I really like Celeste Ng. I read her book, Little Fires Everywhere, Tiny Fires Everywhere, and then found her previous book, Everything I Never Told You. And I really loved that. Her characters are biracial. They're Asian and white, and I'm Asian and white. So it was so nice to just see a biracial character represented, and I loved both of her books. So Everything I Never Told You was my favorite, but Little Fires Everywhere is also a really good one.
Cool. We'll have to check both of those out. All right, Lindsay, thank you so much for coming back on the show. It was wonderful to have you talking about business and financial anxiety and couples. So much good stuff in this episode. Please share with us where we can find you and how we can get a hold of your book. I know it's probably in pre-order right now, or maybe it's up by the time this goes live. So you just tell us how we can get our hands on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyone can find me at Mind Money Balance, MIND. The book is called The Financial Anxiety Solution. And Tess had hinted earlier that there is a special pre-order offer that I want to make sure we touch on. So the pre-order offer is if you pre-order 2 books and send me proof of purchase, you will get to come to an upcoming budgeting workshop valued at $199 for absolutely free. So it's a way of me saying thank you for investing in the emotional and psychological side of your money. And it's a way for me to say the book will really help you with the mental and emotional side of money. And then you can come to this workshop and I'll give you some tangible step-by-step takeaways that you can use. So you can pre-order at any time before February 18th of 2020 in order to join a budgeting workshop. There are a few different dates, so hopefully you can find one that works for you. And the book will be out in winter of 2020.
Perfect. And I know you shared with me a link, so I will make sure to put that in the show notes so everyone can get at it. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for coming back on the show.
Yes, thank you.
And that's a wrap. Episode 152 with Lindsay Bryan-Podvin. You guys, this was such a fun episode. If you want to get access to all the resources that she mentioned in this show, plus don't forget to pre-order her book, which I will link up in the show notes, and send her proof of purchase so you can get her a little thank you. Go to the show notes by heading to wanderwealthypodcast.com/podcast/episode 152. One last thing to mention, we have kicked off a really fun money mindset group coaching program over at Wander Wealthy. But if you are ready to take your mindset to the next level and you're looking for an even more intimate space to do it, working with a one-on-one coach, then I am your girl and I have spots open. So head to wanderwealthy.com/apply. You can fill out that application page. Just make sure you mention that you're interested in mindset coaching. If in fact you're interested in business or personal finance coaching, make sure you mention that as well. There's actually 2 different application pages. Go to wanderwealthy.com, go to the Work With Me tab. You'll find both of them there. But I do have some availability in this first quarter of the year, and I am ready to work with you if you are ready to commit, show up, and make 2020 the best year yet for yourself. So head to wanderwealthy.com, go find ways to work with me, or you can also reach out to me on Instagram. Add me at Tess_Wicks, send me a DM, or you can send me an email, tess@wanderwealthy.com. And I love hearing from you guys, so please do it. Do yourself a favor, reach out to me, let's have a little conversation and make my day. All right, thank you so much again for another wonderful podcast episode, for joining me, for listening to Lindsay and my conversation, and go have the best week ever. And until next time, I hope you wander wealthy.